Captain Jake Morrison stared at the warning lights flashing across his control panel as the USS Horizon shuddered violently around him. The engine core was failing, and there was nothing he could do to stop it. His ship was dying in the cold vacuum of space, millions of miles from the nearest human outpost. The emergency systems screamed warnings as power levels dropped dangerously low. Jake had been exploring the Outer Rim territories for 6 months, mapping new star systems for the Earth Exploration Division. It was supposed to be a routine mission, but nothing about the last few days had been routine. The strange energy readings from the nearby planet Zephyria had caught his attention, and he had moved in for a closer look. That decision might have saved his life. The planet below was beautiful, covered in purple forests and silver oceans that sparkled under the light of twin suns. Jake knew it was inhabited by the Zalani, a humanoid species that had recently joined the Galactic Federation. They were known to be peaceful and technologically advanced, but humans had little direct contact with them. Jake hoped they would be willing to help a stranded explorer. With his last reserves of power, Jake managed to guide his ship into the planet's atmosphere. The landing was rough, tearing through the tops of strange crystalline trees before finally coming to rest in a clearing. Jake checked his systems and realized the damage was even worse than he had feared. The engine core was completely dead, and his communications array was fried. He was truly alone. Jake stepped out of his ship and breathed the alien air. It was clean and fresh, with a faint scent, like mint and flowers. The gravity was slightly lighter than Earth's, making him feel oddly bouncy. The purple trees around him hummed with a low musical sound that seemed to come from their crystalline branches. It was beautiful, but Jake knew beauty wouldn't repair his ship. He was examining the engine damage when he heard footsteps approaching. Jake turned to see a Zalani female walking toward him through the trees. She was tall and graceful, with pale blue skin and silver hair that seemed to glow in the filtered sunlight. Her eyes were large and violet, and she wore a simple robe of shimmering fabric. Jake had seen pictures of the Zalani, but meeting one in person was different. She was strangely beautiful in a way that made his heart skip. The female raised her hand in what Jake hoped was a peaceful gesture. She spoke in accented but clear English. "I am Lyra of the Third Grove. I heard your ship's distress and came to investigate. You are human, are you not?" Jake nodded, relieved that she spoke his language. "I'm Captain Jake Morrison of the Earth Exploration Division. My ship's engine failed and I crashed here. I mean no harm to your people." Lyra stepped closer and examined the damaged ship with interest. "Your technology is crude but interesting. I believe I can help repair this, but it will take time. You cannot remain exposed in this clearing. The night predators will come when the sun set." Jake looked at the sky and realized the twin suns were already lower than before. "I don't want to impose on your people. If you could just point me toward the nearest settlement, I can find shelter there." Lyra shook her head. "The nearest city is many days' walk through dangerous territory. My laboratory is close. You will be safe there while we work on your ship." She turned and began walking back toward the trees. "Come. Night falls quickly here." Jake gathered his emergency supplies and followed Lyra through the strange forest. The crystalline trees grew denser as they walked, and their humming grew louder. Jake noticed that Lyra seemed to understand the sounds, occasionally nodding, or changing direction as if the trees were giving her information. It was like walking through a living musical instrument. They reached Lyra's home as the first sun disappeared behind the horizon. It was not what Jake had expected. Instead of a building, it appeared to be grown from the same crystalline material as the trees. The walls were translucent and glowed with soft internal light. Organic curves replaced straight lines, and Jake could see plants and equipment arranged throughout the interior. "Welcome to my laboratory," Lyra said as she led him inside. "I study the interaction between organic and mineral life forms. Your ship's failure is interesting to me because it represents a breakdown in the harmony between technology and its environment." Jake looked around at the strange equipment and specimens. Everything seemed alive, pulsing with gentle light and making soft musical sounds. "This is incredible. I've never seen anything like it." Lyra prepared a meal of fruits and vegetables that Jake didn't recognize but found surprisingly delicious. They ate by the light of the glowing walls while she explained her work. Jake told her about Earth and human exploration efforts. Despite Their different origins, they found they had much in common. Both were scientists at heart, curious about the universe and eager to understand its mysteries. After dinner, Lyra showed Jake to a sleeping alcove that had been grown from the living walls. The bed was soft and warm, shaped perfectly to his body. As he settled down to sleep, Jake felt strangely at peace. The humming of the walls was soothing, like a gentle lullaby. The next morning, Lyra led Jake back to his ship. She had brought several devices that looked more like living creatures than tools. She attached them to his engine, and they began to pulse with light. "These will slowly repair the molecular damage to your systems," she explained. "But the process cannot be rushed. It will take at least 7 days." Jake was disappointed, but tried not to show it. 7 days. I suppose I'll have to set up camp nearby." "Nonsense," Lyra said firmly. "You will stay at my laboratory. The forest is dangerous for those who do not understand its ways. Besides, I enjoy your company. It has been long since I spoke with someone who shares my curiosity about the universe." So began a week that would change Jake's life forever. Each day, he and Lyra would check on the ship's repair progress, then return to her laboratory to work and talk. Jake helped her with her experiments while she taught him about Zalani science. They shared meals, explored the surrounding forest, and spent long evenings discussing their respective worlds. Jake found himself drawn to Lyra's intelligence and gentle nature. She was unlike anyone he had ever met, combining scientific brilliance with an almost mystical connection to the living world around her. Lyra seemed equally fascinated by Jake's human perspective and his tales of Earth's diverse cultures and environments. On the 7th day, Jake's ship was fully repaired. The living tools had worked their way through every system, restoring damaged circuits and replacing worn components. The engine hummed with new life, actually running better than it had before the failure. Jake should have been overjoyed, but instead he felt a strange sadness at the thought of leaving. "Thank you," he told Lyra as they stood beside his ship. "I don't know how to repay your kindness." Lyra smiled, but her violet eyes looked troubled. "Jake, there is something I must tell you. By sharing food and shelter with me for 7 consecutive days, you have unknowingly participated in an ancient Zalani bonding ritual. According to our laws, we are now married." Jake stared at her in shock. "Married? But I didn't know. I never agreed to any ceremony." "The ceremony is not in words or rituals," Lyra explained softly. "It is in the choice to care for another, to share your life with them even briefly. You chose to help with my work, to learn my ways, to accept my hospitality. In return, I chose to heal your ship and keep you safe. These choices, made freely over 7 days, create a bond that our people consider unbreakable." Before Jake could respond, he heard the sound of approaching aircraft. 3 sleek vehicles descended from the sky, landing gracefully in the clearing. From them emerged 3 Zalani females who looked remarkably similar to Lyra, though each had distinctive features and bearing. "My sisters," Lyra said quietly as the 3 approached. "Kira, Nova, and Zara. They have come because they sensed the bonding through our family connection." The first sister, tall and muscular with intricate tattoos covering her arms, stepped forward. This had to be Kira the warrior. "Human," she said in a voice like steel. "I am Kira. You have married into our family, but your obligations are not yet complete." The second sister, elegant and poised with robes that shifted color as she moved, nodded formally. "I am Nova," she said with diplomatic precision. "What Kira means to say is that galactic law requires additional ceremonies." The third sister, shorter than the others with gentle eyes and hands that glowed with soft, healing light, smiled sympathetically. "I am Zara," she said kindly. "Do not be afraid. We will explain everything." Jake looked from one sister to another, then back at Lyra. "What additional ceremonies?" Kira's expression was grim. "According to Galactic Federation Law Article 847, when a human marries into a Zalani family, they must also marry all unmarried sisters of appropriate age. This law exists to maintain genetic diversity and prevent the concentration of power in single-family branches." Nova nodded. The law was created thousands of years ago and applies to all Federation members. Since Earth recently joined the Federation, humans are bound by these regulations. Zara stepped closer and placed a gentle hand on Jake's arm. We know this is shocking to you. Human customs are different from ours. But the law is clear, and the Galactic Council enforces it strictly. Jake felt his world spinning. So you're telling me that I'm not just married to Lyra, but I have. Admiral Patricia Stone stared at the official document that had just arrived from the Galactic Federation headquarters. The seal was genuine, the legal language was clear, and the implications were staggering. She read it again, hoping she had somehow misunderstood, but the words remained the same. Captain Jake Morrison was legally married to a Zalani female named Lyra, and galactic law required him to also marry her 3 sisters within 30 days. Patricia had been dealing with first-contact situations for 15 years, but nothing had prepared her for this. She called an emergency meeting of the United Earth Council, knowing that this situation could affect humanity's entire relationship with the galaxy. The council chamber filled quickly as word spread through the government complex. Ladies and gentlemen, Patricia began, we have a situation that threatens Earth's membership in the Galactic Federation. One of our exploration captains has accidentally triggered an alien marriage law that could result in severe diplomatic consequences. Councilman Robert Chen raised his hand. What exactly happened, Admiral? Patricia activated the holographic display and showed Jake's personnel file. Captain Morrison was stranded on the planet Zephyria after an engine failure. A local scientist named Lyra helped repair his ship, but their interaction inadvertently triggered a Zalani bonding ritual. According to their customs and galactic law, they are now married. That seems like a personal matter, said Councilwoman Ellen Davis. Surely we can work out some kind of diplomatic solution. I'm afraid it's more complicated than that, Patricia continued. She displayed the legal document from the Federation. Article 847 of the Galactic Legal Code states that when a human marries into a Zalani family, they must also marry all unmarried sisters. This law was designed to prevent genetic and political advantages from being concentrated in single family. Lines! The council chamber erupted in angry voices. Patricia waited for the noise to die down before continuing. The Federation has made it clear that failure to comply will result in Captain Morrison's exile from Federation space and a review of Earth's membership status. Attorney Lisa Cameron, Earth's leading expert on galactic law, stood up from her seat in the observer section. Admiral, if I may, I've been researching this law since the document arrived this morning. It dates back over 3,000 years and has been consistently enforced across dozens of species. There are no recorded exceptions or appeals that have been successful. Councilman David Park looked troubled. What exactly would happen if Earth loses Federation membership? Lisa consulted her notes. We would lose access to advanced medical technology, energy systems, and defensive weapons. More critically, we would no longer be under Federation protection. Several hostile alien empires have been deterred from attacking Earth only because of our Federation membership. So we're talking about the potential destruction of human civilization, Patricia said grimly. All because one captain shared dinner with an alien scientist for a week. Meanwhile, on Zephyria, Jake was learning about his potential wives and the complexity of Zalani family structure. Lyra had taken him back to the family compound, a sprawling complex of crystalline buildings that housed multiple generations. The architecture was breathtaking, with living walls that responded to the inhabitants' moods and needs. Kira led Jake to a training ground where Zalani warriors practiced combat techniques. She moved with deadly grace, wielding energy weapons. That seemed to respond to her thoughts. I command the 3rd Battalion of the Zephyrian Defense Force, she explained as she demonstrated a complex fighting sequence. We protect this sector from raiders and hostile forces. Jake watched in amazement as Kira sparred with 3 opponents simultaneously, defeating them all with fluid movements that looked more like dancing than fighting. Your military tactics are impressive, he said. Human combat strategies intrigue me, Kira replied, lowering her weapons. Your species fights with unpredictability and emotional intensity. Combined with our discipline and technology, such traits could create formidable military units. Nova took Jake to her diplomatic offices, where she was coordinating peace negotiations between 2 warring species. The room was filled with holographic displays showing star charts, trade routes, and cultural analysis data. I serve as an ambassador, To difficult species, she explained, those who have proven resistant to traditional diplomatic approaches. Jake studied the displays with interest. How do you handle species that refuse to negotiate? Patience and understanding, Nova replied. Every species has logical reasons for their actions, even when those reasons seem alien to us. Humans appear to have a talent for finding common ground with diverse groups. This skill could help resolve conflicts that have persisted for centuries. Zara brought Jake to her healing center, where she treated both physical and psychological ailments using advanced Zalani biotechnology. The facility was filled with soft light and soothing sounds, creating an atmosphere of peace and recovery. Many species carry trauma from wars and disasters, she explained, as she demonstrated her healing abilities. I help them find wholeness, again. Jake watched as Zara's hands glowed with gentle energy, healing a patient's injured arm in minutes. Human emotional resilience fascinates me, she said. Your people recover from setbacks with remarkable speed. This strength could help heal psychological wounds that my technology alone cannot reach. Back on Earth, Lisa Cameron was working around the clock to find any legal precedent that might help Jake's situation. Her research team had contacted alien legal experts, studied thousands of case files, and explored every possible angle. The results were discouraging. The law is ironclad, Lisa reported to Admiral Stone. It's been tested in court dozens of times by various species, and the Federation Supreme Court has never ruled against it. The reasoning is sound from their perspective. Marriage alliances between species can create enormous advantages in terms of technology, military strength, and political influence. If these advantages were concentrated in single-family branches, it could destabilize entire sectors. Patricia rubbed her temples, feeling a headache building. What about arguing that Jake didn't understand what he was agreeing to? I tried that angle, Lisa replied. But the law doesn't require conscious consent to the bonding ritual. It's based on actions and choices made freely over time. Jake chose to accept Lyra's hospitality, to share her work, to learn her customs. From their perspective, those choices demonstrate clear intent to bond. This is insane, Patricia muttered. We're talking about forcing a man into multiple marriages because he was polite to his rescuer. Lisa nodded sympathetically. I understand the human perspective, Admiral, but we have to remember that we're dealing with alien cultures that evolved differently from us. What seems arbitrary to us makes perfect sense within their social framework. Meanwhile, Earth's media had gotten hold of the story, and public reaction was explosive. Protest groups formed outside government buildings, some demanding Jake's immediate return, and others arguing for compliance with galactic law. Talk shows featured heated debates between xenophobic activists and pro-integration advocates. Jake watched news broadcasts from Earth with growing concern. He saw protesters carrying signs reading, "Bring Jake home" and "Humans first," while counter-protesters held banners saying, "Honor our commitments" and "Galactic unity." The sight of his fellow humans fighting over his personal situation was deeply troubling. Your people are divided about this matter, Lyra observed as they watched the broadcasts together. Humans don't like being told what to do, Jake replied. We value individual freedom and choice above almost everything else. The idea that I might be forced into marriage goes against our most basic principles. Lyra's expression was sad. I understand. Our bonding was not intended to trap you. I genuinely enjoyed our time together and hoped you felt the same, but I cannot change what has happened, and neither can you. Jake looked at her violet eyes and felt the same attraction he had experienced during their week together. I did enjoy our time, Lyra. You're brilliant and kind, and under different circumstances, I might have chosen to stay with you anyway. But the idea that I don't have a choice makes everything complicated. Elder Thera, the family matriarch, joined them in the viewing room. She was ancient even by Zalani standards, with silver skin that seemed to shimmer with inner light. Young human, she said in a voice like wind through crystal chimes, may I share some wisdom with you? Jake nodded respectfully. Of course, Elder. Choice is an illusion that your young species clings to, Thera said gently. You believe you control your destiny, but in truth, you are shaped by countless forces beyond your understanding. The question is not whether you have choice, but whether you will embrace the path that opens before you or fight against it in futility. But surely you understand why being forced into marriage troubles me, Jake protested. Thera smiled with infinite patience. You are not being forced, child. You are being offered an opportunity. My granddaughters are exceptional individuals who could teach you much about the universe. You could teach them equally valuable lessons about humanity. Together, you might accomplish things that none of you could achieve alone. Jake spent the following days learning more about each sister and their work. Jake woke before dawn and found himself unable to return to sleep. The weight of his decision pressed down on him like gravity from a massive planet. He walked through the crystalline corridors of the family compound, his footsteps echoing softly in the pre-dawn quiet. The living walls sensed his presence and began to glow with gentle light, responding to his emotional state with soothing colors. He found Elder Thera in the meditation garden, sitting beneath a tree that sparkled with bioluminescent flowers. She looked up as he approached, her ancient eyes reflecting wisdom accumulated over centuries of life. "You are troubled, young human," she said, patting the ground beside her. "Sit with me and share your burden." Jake settled onto the soft grass, which immediately began to glow faintly under his weight. "Elder Thera, I need to understand why this law exists. It seems designed to trap people into unwanted relationships." The old Zalani smiled gently. "You see only the surface, child. Let me tell you the true history of Article 847. She gestured to the garden around them, where different species of plants grew in perfect harmony. "Long ago, our galaxy was torn by wars between powerful family alliances. When two species intermarried, they would concentrate their combined advantages in a single family line. These superfamilies became so powerful that they could dominate entire sectors." Jake listened carefully as Thera continued. "The hegemony wars lasted 3 centuries and nearly destroyed galactic civilization. Billions died as these family empires fought for control. The survivors created the Federation and established laws to prevent such concentration of power. Article 847 ensures that interspecies advantages are shared among multiple family branches, maintaining balance." "But what about individual choice?" Jake asked. "Doesn't that matter?" Thera's eyes twinkled with ancient wisdom. "Individual choice led to the hegemony wars, child. When people could choose to create superpowered family alliances, they chose power over peace. Sometimes the greatest individual freedom comes from accepting wise restrictions." Later that morning, Lyra took Jake to her laboratory's restricted section, where she conducted her most sensitive research. The chamber was filled with complex equipment that seemed to blend organic and technological elements seamlessly. Strange specimens floated in tanks of glowing fluid, and monitoring devices recorded data in languages Jake couldn't read. "Jake, there is something about my people that you must understand," Lyra said as she activated a holographic display. "We are dying." The display showed genetic charts and population statistics that painted a grim picture. "A plague struck our homeworld 2 centuries ago," Lyra explained. "It did not kill us outright, but it damaged our reproductive systems. Each generation produces fewer children, and those children are often weak or sterile." Jake studied the data with growing alarm. "How long do you have?" "At current rates, the Zalani will become extinct within 400 years, Lyra replied quietly, "unless we find a way to repair the genetic damage or supplement our population through other means." She manipulated the display to show new data. "When I treated you during your stay, I discovered something remarkable. Human genetic patterns are compatible with ours in ways we never expected. Your DNA could provide the diversity we need to strengthen our children and ensure our survival." Jake felt his understanding of the situation shifting dramatically. "So this isn't just about ancient laws and political alliances. It's about species survival." "My research could save both our peoples," Lyra continued. "But the marriage laws ensure that this genetic advantage cannot be monopolized by a single family. If only I bonded with you, my children would have enormous advantages over their cousins. This would create exactly the kind of power imbalance that led to the hegemony wars." Jake spent the afternoon with Kira, watching her train with her battalion. The Zalani warriors moved with fluid grace, their weapons and armor seeming to merge with their bodies during combat exercises. But Jake noticed something troubling in their tactics. "Your fighting style is beautiful," he told Kira during a break. but it's also predictable. You rely too heavily on tradition and established patterns. Kira's expression hardened. Our methods have been refined over thousands of years of warfare. They are proven effective. Against enemies who fight the same way, Jake replied. But what happens when you face an opponent who ignores your rules and fights dirty? To demonstrate his point, Jake asked to spar with one of Kira's lieutenants. The Zalani warrior was faster, stronger, and more skilled than Jake in every measurable way. But when the fight began, Jake immediately did something the warrior didn't expect. He grabbed a handful of dirt and threw it in the warrior's face, then tackled him to the ground using techniques that had nothing to do with formal combat training. The watching warriors gasped in shock as their comrade found himself pinned by the supposedly inferior human. "This is not honorable combat," one of them protested. "Honor doesn't stop bullets," Jake replied, helping the defeated warrior to his feet. "In real combat, the only rule is survival. Human military doctrine emphasizes adaptability and unconventional thinking. We don't fight fair because fairness gets you killed." Kira stared at Jake with new respect. "Show me more of these techniques." Jake spent hours teaching Kira and her warriors human combat concepts. Guerrilla tactics, psychological warfare, improvised weapons, and battlefield deception. The Zalani were quick learners, and soon they were incorporating human unpredictability into their traditional fighting styles. "The Vorthon Empire has been pressing against our borders for decades," Kira explained as they watched her warriors practice their new techniques. "They are vicious and cunning, with no honor codes to limit their aggression. Our traditional methods have barely held them back." Human tactical thinking could change that balance, Jake realized. Combined with your technology and discipline, it could create a military advantage that neither side could achieve alone. That evening, Nova took Jake to a diplomatic reception, where she was mediating a dispute between two hostile species. The Krell were reptilian creatures who valued strength and directness, while the Solari were ethereal beings who communicated through complex mental harmonics. They had been at war for 50 years over mining rights to a disputed asteroid field. Jake watched as Nova tried to bridge the communication gap between the two species. Her diplomatic training was impressive, but she was making little progress. The Krell became more aggressive when the Solari spoke in their harmonic language, while the Solari retreated into mental isolation when the Krell roared their demands. "May I try something?" Jake asked Nova quietly. She nodded, curious to see what the human would do. Jake stood up and addressed both groups in simple, direct language. "You're both acting like children fighting over toys," he said bluntly. Both species turned to stare at him in shock. Diplomats were supposed to be polite and respectful, not insulting, but Jake continued before they could respond. "The Krell, you're strong and proud, but you're wasting your strength on a fight you can't win. The Solari, you're wise and peaceful, but your wisdom means nothing if you're too proud to compromise." Jake pulled up a holographic map of the disputed region. "Here's what's going to happen. You're going to split the mining rights down the middle, alternate extraction schedules, and share the profits based on the work each side contributes. Anyone who doesn't like it can explain to the Galactic Council why they prefer war to reasonable compromise." The Krell leader roared in indignation. "You dare tell us what to do, small human?" "I dare to tell you the truth," Jake replied calmly. "You're both being stupid, and stupid gets people killed. Smart species find solutions that work for everyone." To everyone's surprise, the Solari representative began to harmonize in what Nova recognized as laughter. "The human speaks harsh truth," the ethereal being said. "Perhaps harsh truth is what this situation requires." Within an hour, Jake had negotiated a preliminary agreement that both sides could accept. It wasn't elegant or diplomatically sophisticated, but it worked. Nova stared at him in amazement. "How did you do that?" she asked as they left the reception. "I've been working on this dispute for months without progress." "Human diplomacy is different from yours," Jake explained. "We don't always try to make everyone happy. Sometimes we just try to make everyone equally unhappy because that's fair." Nova laughed, a sound like silver bells ringing. "Your people's approach to negotiation could resolve conflicts that have resisted traditional methods for centuries. Combined with our diplomatic knowledge and cultural understanding, we could bring peace to regions that have known only war." Next day, Zara took Jake to the healing center's most challenging ward. where patients suffered from trauma too deep for conventional treatment. Jake met veterans of ancient wars, survivors of planetary disasters, and refugees from destroyed worlds. Their pain was written in their eyes, wounds that technology could not touch. "I can heal their bodies," Zara explained, "but their spirits remain broken. They have lost hope, and without hope, even perfect health means nothing." Jake spent time talking with the patients, sharing stories of human resilience and recovery. He told them about Earth's own dark history of wars and disasters, and how humanity had always found ways to rebuild and move forward. His words were simple but sincere, carrying. The Galactic Council Chamber was the largest structure Jake had ever seen, a massive dome that could hold representatives from thousands of species. Floating platforms arranged in concentric circles rose toward the curved ceiling, each occupied by delegates whose forms ranged from familiar humanoids to creatures that defied description. The air hummed with translation devices working in hundreds of languages simultaneously. Jake sat in the human delegation section beside Admiral Stone, wearing his dress uniform and trying not to show his nervousness. Across the chamber, the four Zalani sisters occupied their family's platform, their formal robes shimmering with bioluminescent patterns that indicated their emotional states. The debate had been raging for hours, and Jake could see the tension in their posture. Chancellor Varix, the ancient Altarian who presided over the council, called for order with a voice that resonated through the chamber like distant thunder. "The matter before us is clear," the Chancellor announced. "Article 847 of the Galactic Legal Code requires compliance from all Federation members. The question is whether humanity should be granted exemption from this law." The Korthak delegate, a massive insectoid creature, buzzed its opposition. "The law exists for good reason. No species can be permitted to ignore Federation statutes simply because they find them inconvenient." "But humans were not part of the original agreement," countered the Solari representative, its ethereal form shifting colors as it spoke. "They should not be bound by laws they had no voice in creating." Jake watched as species after species weighed in on his fate. Some argued for human exemption based on cultural differences, while others insisted that all Federation members must be held to the same standards. The debate seemed endless, with neither side able to gain a clear advantage. Then the emergency alarms began to sound. Chancellor Varix's expression darkened as urgent reports flooded the communication channels. "The session is suspended," the Chancellor announced. "Vorthon forces have launched a surprise attack on the Kepler Station defensive outpost." The chamber erupted in chaos as delegates scrambled to contact their military commands. Holographic heat displays showed the tactical situation as it unfolded in real time. 3 Vorthon battle fleets had emerged from hyperspace without warning, overwhelming the Federation garrison with superior numbers and ruthless tactics. Admiral Stone grabbed Jake's arm. "This is bad. Kepler Station guards one of the main hyperspace routes to the core worlds. If it falls, the Vorthans will have a clear path to attack dozens of civilized systems." On the Zalani platform, Kira was receiving urgent communications from her military command. Jake could see her frustration even from across the vast chamber. She turned to her sisters and spoke quickly in their harmonic language, her gestures indicating extreme urgency. "What are they saying?" Jake asked Admiral Stone. Patricia consulted her translation device. "Kira's battalion has been ordered to deploy immediately, but there's some kind of legal complication preventing them from leaving Zephyria." Jake felt a chill of understanding. He called out across the chamber, his voice amplified by the translation system. "Kira, what's the problem?" The Zalani warrior's response was broadcast to the entire assembly. "Galactic military protocol requires family combat units to be legally complete before deployment to active war zones. Since our family bonding is incomplete, we cannot fight as a unified force." The implications hit Jake like a physical blow. The 4 sisters represented one of the most elite combat teams in the Federation military, but they were grounded by legal technicalities while people died in the Vorthon attack. Nova's diplomatic training allowed her to explain the situation more clearly. Federation Command recognizes that incomplete family units are psychologically unstable and tactically unreliable. They cannot authorize our deployment until the marriage bonds are formalized. Jake stared at the tactical displays, showing Kepler Station's defenses crumbling under Vorthon assault. Thousands of Federation personnel were fighting desperately against overwhelming odds, and one of their most potent assets was trapped by bureaucratic requirements. "How long until the station falls?" Jake called out. "A Terran military analyst," responded grimly. "At current rates, 6 hours at most." Jake looked around the chamber at the delegates who had been debating his fate for hours. Their abstract legal arguments suddenly seemed petty compared to the real-world consequences of their inaction. People were dying, while politicians argued about ancient precedents and cultural sensitivity. "Chancellor Varix," Jake said, standing up so his voice would carry clearly. "I request permission to address the full council." The ancient Altarian's many eyes focused on Jake with interest. "The human directly affected by our deliberations may speak." Jake took a deep breath and stepped forward to the chamber's center, where his words would be heard by every delegate. "Honored representatives, you have been debating whether I should be forced to marry 4 women I barely know. You've talked about legal precedents and cultural differences and the rights of individual choice." The chamber fell silent as Jake's words were translated into hundreds of languages. "While you've been talking, people have been dying. Right now, Federation citizens are fighting for their lives against an enemy that shows no mercy and follows no rules. And one of our most effective military assets is grounded because of legal paperwork." Jake gestured toward the Zalani platform. "Kira commands warriors who could help save Kepler Station. Nova's diplomatic skills could coordinate multinational relief efforts. Lyra's scientific knowledge could develop countermeasures to Vorthan weapons. Zara's healing abilities could save lives that would otherwise be lost." He turned to face the chamber's upper levels, where the most powerful species had their platforms. "You want to know what I choose? I choose to stop arguing about laws and start saving lives. If marrying these 4 remarkable women will put them back in the fight where they belong, then perform the ceremony right now." The chamber erupted in surprised murmurs and urgent discussions. Jake had just volunteered to resolve the legal crisis in the most direct way possible, but the implications were staggering. Chancellor Varix consulted with his advisors before responding. "Human Morrison, are you formally requesting an emergency marriage ceremony to be conducted by this council?" "I am," Jake replied firmly, "and I'm requesting that it be done immediately so these women can deploy to save Federation lives." The Korthak delegate buzzed its objection. "Emergency ceremonies require unanimous consent from all affected parties. The Zalani sisters must also agree." On their platform, the 4 sisters were deep in urgent discussion. Jake could see the conflict in their body language as they weighed their personal feelings against their duty to the Federation. Finally, Lyra stood and spoke for all of them. "We consent to the emergency ceremony," she announced. "Our people's safety and the Federation's security are more important than personal preferences or traditional rituals." Chancellor Varix nodded gravely. "In times of war, the Council has authority to perform emergency legal ceremonies. However, this decision will be binding under all Federation law. There will be no appeals or annulments possible." "I understand," Jake replied. "Do it." The next few minutes passed in a blur of ancient rituals and legal formalities. The Council's ceremonial staff appeared as if from nowhere, carrying artifacts from dozens of species to represent the universal nature of the bonds being formed. Jake found himself standing in the center of the chamber with the 4 Zalani sisters, surrounded by witnesses from across the galaxy. The ceremony itself was surprisingly brief, focusing on legal commitments rather than romantic promises. Jake spoke the required words of acceptance and partnership, while each sister affirmed her consent to the bonds being created. Ancient crystalline artifacts glowed with inner light as the legal framework was established, and quantum signatures were recorded in the Federation's central database. When it was finished, Jake Morrison was legally married to 4 alien women, in the eyes of galactic law. The weight of that reality hadn't fully sunk in when Kira immediately activated her military communications. "Command, this is Major Kira of the 3rd Battalion," she said with crisp efficiency. "Family unit is now legally complete and ready for immediate deployment." The response was instantaneous. "Confirmed, Major. Transport ships are en route to your location. ETA 15 minutes. Within moments, the Zalani platform became a hub of military activity as deployment orders flowed in. The sisters moved with practiced coordination, each taking charge of their respective specialties. Jake watched in amazement as they transformed from individuals he barely knew into a unified military force. "Jake," Lyra called to him as she gathered scientific equipment. "You are part of our family unit now. Federation protocol requires all family members to deploy together during active operations." The realization hit Jake that he wasn't just married. To 4 alien women, he was now part of their military unit. Admiral Stone looked at him with concern and something that might have been pride. "Captain Morrison," she said formally, "you're being transferred to Joint Federation Command for the duration of this crisis. Make humanity proud." The transport ships arrived exactly on schedule, sleek vessels that could move between star systems in hours rather than days. Jake found himself aboard the command. The Vorthan command ship hung in space like a massive metal predator, its hull scarred by countless battles and bristling with weapons designed for maximum destruction. Jake crouched in the ventilation shaft above the bridge, his heart pounding, as he listened to the alien voices below discussing their attack on Kepler Station. 3 hours earlier, his new family unit had infiltrated the Vorton fleet, using tactics that violated every rule of civilized warfare. While Federation forces engaged the enemy fleets in direct battle, Jake and his wives had slipped aboard the command vessel disguised as maintenance workers. The plan was pure human audacity, combined with Zalani technology and precision. Target. Their command structure, Jake had explained during the mission briefing. Cut off the head and the body dies. It's not honorable, but it works. Kira's warrior training had been scandalized by the suggestion at first. "We do not attack enemies who cannot defend themselves." "They're not defenseless," Jake had replied, grimly. "They're commanding fleets that are murdering thousands of innocent people. Sometimes the most honorable thing you can do is something dishonorable." Now, as Jake listened to Vorton commanders coordinating their assault on the stations, medical facilities, he felt no guilt about what they were about to do. These creatures had forfeited any claim to honorable treatment when they chose to target hospitals and civilian shelters. Lyra's voice whispered in his comm unit, barely audible even through the advanced Federation technology. "Biological weapon, deployed in the air recycling system. All Vorthon personnel will be unconscious in 4 minutes." Jake checked his breathing mask and waited as Lyra's carefully designed compound spread through the ship's atmosphere. It was perfectly tailored to Vorthon physiology, causing deep sleep without permanent harm. Within minutes, the entire crew would be helpless. "This feels like cheating," Kira muttered over the comm as she watched Vorthon soldiers collapse at their posts. "Good," Jake replied. "When the enemy is trying to commit genocide, cheating is the moral choice." The Vorthan command crew fell unconscious one by one, their brutal efficiency replaced by peaceful slumber. Jake dropped from the ventilation system and quickly moved to the main command console. The alien technology was unfamiliar, but Nova had briefed him on the basic control systems. "Nova, I need you to access their communication systems," Jake called as his wife materialized from her hiding spot. "Send surrender orders to all Vorthan ships in the fleet." Nova's diplomatic training had included extensive study of military communication protocols. Her fingers danced over the alien controls as she composed orders in the Vorthan command language. "Attention all vessels. This is Fleet Command. The Federation has demonstrated superior tactical capabilities. All units will cease hostilities immediately and prepare for withdrawal." The response was immediate and gratifying. Across the battlefield, Vorthon ships began powering down their weapons and breaking off their attacks. The rigid hierarchy of their military culture meant that orders from the command ship were followed without question. Zara appeared from the ship's lower levels, where she had been treating wounded Vorthon crew members with the same care she would show any patient. "The injured are stable," she reported. "No permanent damage from the biological agent." Jake looked around the bridge at his 4 wives, each of whom had contributed their unique abilities to the mission's success. Lyra's scientific expertise had made the non-lethal assault possible. Kira's warrior training had gotten them aboard, undetected. Nova's diplomatic knowledge had ended the battle without further bloodshed. Zara's healing skills had ensured that even their enemies were treated with compassion. "Good work, everyone," Jake said as he activated the ship's emergency beacon to signal Federation forces. "We just saved thousands of lives and ended the battle in less than an hour. By violating every principle of honorable warfare, Kira observed, though her tone suggested respect rather than criticism. Sometimes honor is a luxury civilized people can't afford, Jake replied. The Vorthons were planning to target refugee ships next. Would it have been more honorable to let them murder children in the name of fair play? The rescue ships arrived within minutes, bringing Federation medical teams and security forces to process the sleeping Vorthon crews. Admiral Stone's face appeared on the command screen, her expression mixing relief with amazement. "Captain Morrison, this is the most unconventional military victory in Federation history," she said. "You've captured an entire enemy fleet without firing a shot." "It was a team effort," Jake replied, putting his arm around Lyra's shoulders. "Human tactics combined with Zalani capabilities. The Vorthons never knew what hit them." "The Council will want a full debriefing," Admiral Stone continued. "This changes everything about how we approach the Vorthon threat." Over the following days, news of the bloodless victory spread throughout Federation space. The seemingly impossible combination of human audacity and Zalani precision had accomplished what traditional military force could not. Other species began requesting similar partnerships, eager to learn from the successful model. Jake found himself at the center of a diplomatic revolution as the Council established new protocols for interspecies military cooperation. The emergency, marriage that had seemed like a desperate measure, now appeared to be the foundation for an entirely new approach to galactic security. "You have started something that will reshape our entire civilization," Elder Thera told Jake during a video conference from Zephyria. "Mixed families are forming across Federation space, each combining the strengths of different species." Jake looked around the quarters he now shared with his 4 wives aboard the Federation starship New Harmony. The space was larger than his old explorer cabin, but still felt cramped for 5 people. They had spent weeks learning to live together, to understand each other's needs and preferences. It hadn't been easy. Human individualism clashed with Zalani collective thinking in ways that created constant small conflicts. Jake's need for privacy battled with their preference for shared space. His direct communication style sometimes hurt feelings that were accustomed to more subtle interaction. But they had also discovered unexpected compatibilities. Jake's curiosity about the universe matched their scientific interests perfectly. His protective instincts aligned with their commitment to family and duty. His adaptability helped them solve problems that had seemed impossible before. "I never expected to fall in love with 4 people at once," Jake confided to Lyra one evening as they watched the stars through their viewport. "I'm not even sure that's what this is." Lyra's violet eyes sparkled with gentle humor. "Love has many forms. What we have built together may not match human romantic ideals, but it is real and valuable. We are partners in every sense that matters." Their relationship had evolved into something unique, neither pure romance nor simple partnership, but a hybrid that combined elements of both. Jake cared deeply for each of his wives, though his feelings for each were different. With Lyra, he shared intellectual curiosity and scientific wonder. With Kira, he found camaraderie and mutual respect between warriors. With Nova, he enjoyed diplomatic complexity and political strategy. With Zara, he discovered emotional healing and psychological support. The Federation military had taken notice of their effectiveness as a combined unit. They were assigned to increasingly important missions, using their unique capabilities to resolve conflicts that had resisted traditional approaches. Jake's human unpredictability continued to surprise enemies who expected civilized behavior from Federation forces. Their success inspired other mixed marriages across the galaxy. Humans partnered with Altarian philosophers to explore ethical questions that had puzzled both species. Zalani scientists worked with Korthak engineers to develop hybrid technologies. Solari diplomats joined with human negotiators to resolve disputes that had lasted for centuries. "We have accidentally created a new model for galactic civilization," Nova observed during one of their mission briefings. "Integration rather than mere cooperation." Jake nodded as he studied reports from across Federation space. Mixed families were proving more effective than anyone had predicted at solving complex problems. The combination of different perspectives and capabilities was producing innovations that single-species teams could never achieve. "The Vorthons have noticed too," Kira added grimly. Intelligence reports suggest they're developing new strategies to counter our integrated approach. Let them try, Jake replied with confidence. We'll adapt faster than they can respond. That's what humans do best. Their next assignment came from the highest levels of Federation command. A previously unknown alien species had made contact near the Galactic Rim, but initial diplomatic efforts had failed completely. The newcomers seemed hostile to all Federation approaches and had begun attacking exploration ships. Your family unit will make first contact, the mission briefing explained. Traditional diplomatic methods have been ineffective, and military force would likely trigger a larger conflict. Jake looked at the sparse intelligence reports about the mysterious aliens. They appeared to be silicon-based life forms with a hive mind structure and technology that operated on principles Federation science didn't understand. This could be even more dangerous than the Vorthan situation, Lyra warned.